Okay, well, thank you for tuning in to the next edition here of the Navigating the Coronavirus Economy series. This session here, I will be leading myself. I'm Tom DuFore, the CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And what we look to accomplish in this series is just keeping you up to date with relevant information, tips from experts and data that's available. And as I mentioned, this week I'll be leading this session. And my reason for wanting to do so is every few weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, I've wanted to do a little bit of an update on different data trends that we're seeing on the franchise sales and lead generation side of business. And so there are some data sources that some of you may or may not be familiar with. Some of you may look at them, but I want to walk through some of these to give us a snapshot into what's happening now, and even as compared to just 6 weeks ago, and some of the differences and the trends that are going on. And so to get started with that, let me go ahead and share our screen. And by the way, if you have questions as you're going through this, please do not hesitate to type that into a chat box. Yvonne will be helping us in making sure that we can answer those questions as we go through this. And let's go ahead and pull this screen up here to share. All right. So here is what we wanted to share with you. Well, I guess this is a little bit of a shameless plug here. If you can see this, you can, this is our podcast that we launched here about 2 months ago. It's called Multiply Your Success. If you have not tuned in, subscribed, check it out. You can go ahead and check that out on any of your favorite podcast services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, just anywhere you're really looking to listen to this, you'll find it available. This week's episode is Why You Should Buy Your Kid a Franchise with Jeremy Porbet, who talks about how he bought a franchise when he was 23 years old and turned it into a massive multi-unit operation. Pretty cool story, something for you to listen to. So jumping back into why we're here, and this data literally just came out that I'm going to show you, and this is the Small Business Startup Sentiment Index. And this is published by Franchise Insights. They usually seem to publish about one new data set every week that comes out. And this is talking about the optimism for small business startup sentiment. And this is a really interesting chart. We've seen the optimism starting to rise, but if you see here in February this was pre-pandemic levels. It showed that the startup sentiment, and you see the chart at the bottom here, the blue bar indicates these are people who were interviewed that agree that now is a good time to start a business. And the orange is what people say that think conditions will be worse in 3 months. So here's a good indicator here. So back in February, it was 76% were thinking now is a good time to start a business, and only 2% of people thought in 3 months things were going to be worse. And then it dropped big time in March to 55% of people interviewed thought now was a bad time. And we can see this blue bar steadily rise. April, 56%, May, 59%. And then look at the jump here in June and into July. 68% of people are thinking now is a good time to start a business. So it's almost, you can kind of see these first 3 months here of the pandemic and the coronavirus situation that came out as just businesses, as people, as really an entire world, we're just kind of figuring out what in the world is going on. Is this doom and gloom? Are people's arms and limbs falling off? You know, what's going on with this thing here? And then after things started to be sorted out, that, you know, if you contract this, your chances are you're not going to, you know, your legs aren't going to fall off or something. And while it is serious, I don't want to poke fun at that. This is serious, but the severity of it maybe was not quite as severe as we had thought. And look, at optimism starts popping back up. And then you can see here, if we look at the orange bar, we think conditions will be worse in 3 months. So it was spiked here in March, and then it steadily has declined in June, and it popped back up again in July. I'd have to imagine that has something to do with some resurgence in just some with the coronavirus cases increasing in parts of the country. So I think that this is a really interesting data set here. One of the others that I wanted to share with you, all these bars here, let me see, all of these people, okay, there we go. We had 2 people hanging out there. All right, let me pull up, here we go. I wanted to show you the franchise index. So from May to June, this is going to show the change in franchise interest in different brand categories, And I think that that's a really important component here for you to take a look at, is that we have these, you see in personal care, a surge in personal care interest. And so I can tell you from my vantage point, and from the clients and brands we've been working with, we have definitely seen an increase in interest from franchise candidates that are expressing an interest in personal care. This is something that people can, it's something that, because of the coronavirus, we're seeing that people are very interested in this. We're seeing that they're just being attracted to it. Again, financial services has grown. Senior and healthcare, childcare related services have picked up again. And here's one that I always like to point out: food and restaurant, hospitality. People are always interested in what's going on there. Well, food and restaurant, we've seen a big uptick in interest from May to June here. So I think that's a good indication of what people are thinking, and just some word on the street that we're hearing from prospects for different food brands that we work with and that our team are speaking with. The candidates that are coming through now recognize that they're not going to be opening up today. They recognize that they will likely open in 6 months or 9 months or maybe a year by the time they actually get the business open. And they're seeing this as an opportunity that for second generation locations, or a former business of some kind that is now shut down, that was a restaurant, that is now available for you to it's now available for you to get in at a really affordable price, where you don't have the same build out expenses and things like that. So just some interesting data for you to see. Then we have cleaning and maintenance, home services, sports and recreation. But, you know, it's interesting to see personal care booming here and financial services booming there. I mean, I think that's really, really interesting data for us to take a look at, because even, I'm trying to move this bar here. This Zoom bar keeps getting in my way. Sorry about that, folks. There's a chart from, is it this one here? Yeah, here it is. So what's interesting is from April to May, you can see the reduction in interest. So the previous categories were growth, and you look at this here back from just a few months ago, limited growth in some of these areas and decrease from April to May, which you would have probably expected to see something like that. This next chart that I want to show you is talking about U.S. retail traffic and what's happening today. So what is the real data telling us about what's going on for retail traffic? Okay, this is people out and about, going shopping, going into stores, grocery stores, going to their mailboxes, just people getting out and into the wide world that exists out there. And so this chart here uses a benchmark of traffic. The benchmark traffic period is February 1st through the 23rd in the United States. So this is pre the roughly 3 weeks prior to the pandemic, and really starting to take hold in late February in parts of the country into, mid-March, where things really seem to, fall off the cliff. And you can see here, week by week, the retail trends. So this February 1st to the 23rd is the benchmark. So 0 is the average for that 3-week time period. So how is retail traffic compared to pre-pandemic levels? I think that's something important for you to know. And if you read this down here, this data here, I'm just going to read this. It says, according to the data, U.S. retail traffic was down. This data was constructed from 280 billion, and I'm not going to try to say that word, mobile GPS observations combined with 3 million retail locations for the entire United States. Okay, so this is a huge data set from basically cell phones pinging in different locations to show you what's going on. So this is about as real as it gets. Every time you're out, this data is getting aggregated to show where are people, where are they congregating, what are they doing, and this is showing out of 3 million retail locations where that traffic is. And what's you see how it fell in March. Here's it kind of fell off the cliff in February into the first part of March. It bottoms out here around April, the week of April 20th. Things start to pick back up again, and we can see the trend. It's going up, continuing to go up. It spiked here, a little dip down again this week. I foresee this trend continuing to have some, little bit of, this up and down, but continuing trend of consistently going up. I think that's a good indicator for us in terms of what's happening for just the general consumer, for your business, for my business, for all businesses that exist out there. Okay, next data source I'd like to take a look at is Google Trends. I just did this search a few minutes before the webinar started. You can do this yourself. Just go to Google Trends and you can verify the data here, okay? Now, what I did is I went to Google Trends and I just typed in the phrase up top here, buy a franchise. And this is just over the course of the last 12 months, how many times is the word or the phrase buy a franchise getting typed in, and how popular is it compared to other times during that same data cycle? And so we'll just explain this here. Numbers represent search interest relative to the highest point on the chart for the given region and time. A value of 100 is the peak popularity for the term. A value of 50 means that the term is half as popular. A score of 0 means there was not enough data for this term. So I like to show this to say that over the course of the past rolling 12 months, so from what's today, August 7th. So from August 7th of 2019 to today, what's going on with the searching trends on Google in the United States for the search term buy a franchise, which we all have an interest in learning what this is all about. So when you take a look at it, where is our peak? If you look at the peak, well, I think that this is interesting. In October of 2019, we hit a peak search for that phrase, buy a franchise. Look at, very interesting, when we also hit a peak for the search term, buy a franchise, in July of 2020. You say, how can that be? Scratching my head. How in the world could we have a peak in October and then a peak during this pandemic and coronavirus crisis that we're all in? And look at here, people are looking for it. And look, you can see that back in March and April, which kind of starts to coincides a little bit with that retail traffic, you see it drop down here, the lowest point by far for that search term. But look how quickly it popped back up. Here it is, back in May, it's at similar levels it's at a higher level actually in May of this year than in parts of January and February of this year. I think that's incredible. And look at the trend here now. It kind of peaked, it's dropped down, and now it's popping back up again. And so what that means to me and for you to know is that there is still an interest in people searching and looking to buy a franchise. You're going to continue to see this trend start to happen, especially as these job benefits have worn off for the extra unemployment benefit that's getting paid out. People are going to be looking for jobs. The same jobs that existed before are not going to be there. And that means people are going to be thinking about starting a business. And that inevitably will lead to some of those people looking to buy a franchise, because many of them may start independent brands, but there are plenty out there that will say, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And any brokers that are on here or folks in the franchise space know exactly what I'm talking about. We tend to see, as unemployment goes up, the interest in purchasing a franchise goes up as well. So they tend to coincide together. And the inverse is, the opposite is true as well. And we saw prior to as the unemployment rate keeps going down and down and down, when the economy was really, really strong there the last 2 years, the number of people buying a franchise was slowly going down. And I have pretty strong confidence that whether it's this year, we see an increase. I definitely think next year we will see an increase for sure in total buyers. So I think that this is some really interesting data to share and talk about what's going on in the franchise space. This is what I'm seeing out there. This data confirms what we're hearing from franchise candidates. In the franchise sales process right now, we are finding that we are getting to a yes or a no very, very quickly in the franchise sales cycle. So we are finding people who are coming in, just in general, the quality of the buyer tends to be better right now. That's what we're seeing from our team and from speaking to others in the industry, that the buyers that are in are very serious, that they're serious now. And the in-betweeners, the folks who don't say yes or no, but the maybes, those have drastically reduced. And so it's a yes or a no right away. And everybody knows in sales, a no is sometimes as good as a yes, because then you can put it away and you don't have to think about that opportunity anymore. You can just keep focused on the folks who are saying yes or maybe. And if we can eliminate maybes, that helps you to know where to focus your time and attention. So with that, that's the bulk of the presentation today, folks. I just wanted to give a quick recap to showcase to you what we're seeing with consumer optimism growing based off, let me pull this up here. Let me pull this chart up here. So consumer optimism or business startup optimism increasing. I also want to highlight here here it is. This shows you by demographic where people are coming into the system by generation. So you have baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials, and you can see where the percentage of franchise prospects is coming from. So in today's world, your largest category for franchise prospects, far above and away, is Gen X. It's not even close. Gen X is by far your largest candidate pool of people who are buying franchises, which, if you think about it, makes sense. They're the group that's right now roughly 40 to 55 years old. And this is a group that's been working for a while. They've got some assets. They're maybe tired of working for someone else and are ready to be their own boss. And they've got a little money and resources to make that happen. That would make sense based on the life stage that they are in. You can see baby boomers, their percentage of interest has been kind of on a decline. Here you see it, they're still purchasing the second highest percentage, but they're on a decline. And then millennials, you're starting to see that start to climb upward here, which makes sense as the millennials are starting to get older, closer to that 40, mid 40s range. And baby boomers, you've got a large portion that have retirement on the mind, and more have retirement or are in retirement. So just to give you a quick snapshot on that there. So I think that's interesting. We're seeing the retail traffic continue to get closer and closer and closer to pre-pandemic levels. It's still down. This week, it's down 24%. Last week, it was only down about 16%. So we saw a little dip here go on. A recap here on the term buying a franchise. I mean, we are seeing high levels, some of the highest levels we've seen over the previous 12 months. I think that's a big indicator for you there. And what I'd like to do is just open things up for some questions. Are there any questions? Type them in the chat box. Any comments? We can go ahead and unmute. If you'd like to ask some questions, make a comment. If anybody's in the field seeing something different, please go ahead and share. All right, here we go. Let's see. Here's a question. Are there geographic differences? So when you're saying geographic differences, are you meaning in terms of lead generation or just in general with everything we've gone through? Let me see if I can find you here. Let me unmute you here. Oh, wait. Areas of the country doing better than others. Lead gen and buying. Yeah, so let's go ahead and I'll scroll down. I'm going to share this. Let me share my screen back with you here. And I will pull up this screen and show you where we're seeing. So this is by state here. So if we go to this is the buy a franchise page we were just on. If we scroll down, you can see these blue states are where you're seeing higher level of interest. So versus some of the other states. So Nevada is number 1. Louisiana is number 2. North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, New York, Arizona, Kentucky, Maryland, Oklahoma, Indiana, Texas, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Michigan, South Carolina, California, Connecticut. And it just kind of goes through and shows where people are searching for that. So I think you'll tend to find that. And then let me see if this gives us any update here for states. I know there was a fairly recent one out for the most common states for where they're opening. I don't see it here offhand, but in general, it's in general, this is something that you're going to see it vary state to state. And, and one of the advantages for franchising, if you're tuning into this, you may want to be taking a look at if you're not already promoting or marketing franchises in some of these states that are popular, you should consider it. So if you're not promoting your franchise in Nevada, well, based off of this, you probably should be. If you're not looking in Louisiana, you probably should be. If you're not considering North Carolina, you probably want to consider that, or Georgia or Tennessee, or looking at some of these other top 10 markets. If they're not on your list, you probably should check it out. And these tend to coincide as well. You see some of these high growth, population growth areas. The Southeast is growing, Nevada, Arizona, Texas. All of these regions are growing with population. So these are areas that you should be marketing and considering to be promoting your franchise in. So thank you. That was a great question. Any other questions while we've got while we're on the line here? Let's see. I don't see any more questions. Okay. Well, as we close out, just want to thank you for tuning in. This was recorded, so we will be sharing this. We will be sharing this to showcase, or we have recorded, so we will be able to share this again and publish this again. If you have not, if we do list this on our website, so this is our website, bigskyfranchiseteam.com. Up at the top bar, we have free resources and tools on surviving and thriving in the coronavirus economy. And if you click on that, this will take you to our video series where you can see any of the previous sessions that we've done. So if you'd like to take a look at some of these, site selection was a really cool episode. Construction trends happening now. Some really good resources in there if you'd like to tune in to some of these experts and folks that we've had on the show. And if you haven't done so, subscribe to our podcast. We'd love to have you tune in. Multiply Your Success. Just Google search that, or take a look at that. If we'd love to have you tune in to our weekly guests who are tuning in with us. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Enjoy your weekend, and keep safe out there. Keep fighting the fight. Keep pushing forward. We'll see you back here next week for another episode here of Navigating the Coronavirus Economy. Thanks so much.